All right, hello and welcome to another Expert Inside interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP Online Sales Magazine and Pipeliner CRM, formerly known as, now known as Coavera. Joining you as usual from sunny San Diego. And today I'm delighted to be joined from the other coast by Kelly Faetanini. How are you doing, Kelly?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kelly is a designer of wedding dresses, and you started at age 19. You sold your first wedding gown to a bride in Chicago. Then you worked your way up through the fashion industry, and finally, in 2012, you decided it was your time to step up and create a brand that truly cared about each and every one of its brides, and not just about the sale of the dress. And so, Kelly, give me, as you came to the fashion industry and you came to this point in 2012, what did you feel was missing from the wedding dress experience, if you like?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a couple things that kind of evolved. So the first thing when I started the business in 2012 was, the industry being
Mhm.
wholesale to, the business or the company that I was working for prior was wholesale selling to retailers.
Right.
And it was not a great dynamic. So what I realized is there was not really a big focus on customer centric at that point. One big company that started to introduce being customer centric was Zappos at the time. And I found that company very refreshing and inspirational. So when I launched my business, I had customer centric being the primary focus of
Mhm.
everything I did. So that was everything from serving my wholesale customers down to the bride. I started the business initially really focusing on the product. And then I finally had a moment a couple years in where I was standing at a store and watching a bride try on one of the dresses. And I could just see everything changed about her demeanor, her posture, her smile, her everything in her body just kind of shifted.
Mhm.
And I realized I'm not just designing, any traditional product. This is really something that truly changes the essence of a bride, and it was really more of
Mhm.
an experience than a product. So since
Mhm.
then, I've been really focusing whenever I design the product, how am I influencing the bride? How am I helping her feel the fullest embodied version of herself through
Mhm.
our product?
Yeah, and let's face it. I mean, that's I'm not that I've ever tried on wedding dresses, but I mean that's a stressful time. Let's face it, for somebody who's getting married and going through that experience. So, as you said, I mean that moves it away from product and into something where there's a lot of emotion invested in there. There's a lot of, there's excitement, but there's also fear. There's all of those things, and oftentimes that's when people feel most alone.
Oh, absolutely. And what happens with brides being overwhelmed, and anyone pretty much when you're
Mhm.
overwhelmed in a situation, you immediately move out of your heart and into your head, and you're
Mhm.
over analyzing everything. Everything becomes stressful, and it kind of takes the joy out of the
Mhm.
experience. So, what I love is when I'm with a bride, or even what we train our consultants and our team,
Mhm.
is to really help them kind of go back into their heart and really feel, what are you feeling in this dress? Get out of your head, come to your heart, and how does this make you feel? Do you feel more the true authentic version of yourself? And once you bring the bride back into her heart, everything starts to relax a little bit more, and you get out of your head, and it becomes a much more enjoyable process.
Yeah. So, so what have you seen the difference in that when you first started doing that? Like, what was the difference you saw in your clients?
So the clients, I would say, You know, brides would try on hundreds of dresses
Mm.
and really overthink it. And they're also starting to think about, what does my mom think? What does grandma think? What do my
Yeah.
friends
Yeah.
think? And they're often completely neglecting how they actually feel in
Hmm.
something and sacrificing, not only the experience at trying on the dress, but, possibly choosing something that doesn't fully align with what feels right for them. So, as we started to work into that more, we found that brides are really starting to feel a little bit more empowered to speak their truth and not be so afraid to choose
Hmm.
something that's really right for them.
Yeah. Well, let's face it. I mean, it's going to be your wedding photos, and you're going to be living with them. So if you don't love your dress, if you bought the dress to satisfy someone else,
Absolutely, but you wouldn't believe it happens all the time,
oh, I'm
and
sure.
I've seen some really, really sad situations where, I like to think that everyone means well when they're giving opinions, but,
Mm,
it can be overwhelming and overbearing and, a lot of pressure. It puts more pressure on the bride. So, we've also started to talk to the families that are coming with the bride and the friends and, just kind of reminding everyone that this is really about the bride and how
right.
she feels in the gown and what's, lighting her up.
Yeah, because I'm sure you often have too many cooks in the kitchen, right?
Yes. Way too many.
And so as you mentioned, like, so you've as your business has grown, you have people working for you, the team, you have consultants and all of that. What do you recruit for now that you are doing this differently, say, than maybe some traditional designers would do it?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Obviously, sales skills are a plus,
Hmm.
but really it's the personality of the person, and the passion. And I try to I try to look for people who are really kind of grounded in themselves as well.
Hmm.
People that are not overthinkers, people that also are coming from their heart as well. And when they show up to work, they're driven by something purpose driven. They're driven by wanting to make a difference. Um, Almost, they're also coming to work with more emotion,
Hmm.
and, then they're much more able to connect with our brand and the brides that we're working with.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, like, EQ and emotional intelligence is extremely important here. Because let's face it, I mean, you want to be able to read the signs before, say, the poor bride to be is in full meltdown mode, or there's tension in the air, and there's about to be a knockdown, drag out fight over this. I mean, I presume you need people who can anticipate these things.
Yes, absolutely. Anticipating them, and what I really realized too is that person also has to, have a high level of self-awareness within themselves, because
Hmm.
if you can't recognize stuff like that within yourself, you're not going to be able to recognize it within other people. So, and it doesn't even matter age either. I've had
Hmm.
people that we've hired that are younger to much more mature, and it's more of, I think, where that person is in their own life and how they view the world and, how attuned they are with themselves. And, I think a high level of self awareness translates really well to high EQ in, noticing that in brides.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. I think self-awareness, to be honest, I think self-awareness is the most important attribute anybody can have. Unfortunately, a lot of us don't, gain that till later in life. It's a pity, but as they say, youth is wasted on the young. But to that point, though, about that is it's self-awareness. It's not that easy to find. To be honest, it's not that easy to find people who are very self-aware. We can find lots of people who can figure out what's going on with other people, but very bad at figuring out what's going on with themselves.
Oh, completely. A long time ago, I read the book, or I think it was the book, The Who Method of Hiring. And it's a very, very, very thorough method of, interviewing people. It's not typical questions. And you actually go back to, let's talk about how was it growing up, and what did you do in college, and what was your experience like for your first job, and it's more the emotional intelligence questions that you're asking and their experience. And you're able to kind of find consistencies of how that person just naturally sees the world and how they, handle situations and how they see life and how those life situations actually shape who they are today.
Mhm.
And those types of questions really help identify those types of people. You can see a lot more character in those questions, versus the typical, how would you close this sale? The sale taxes, because those tactics can always be trained, but
Mhm.
the other stuff, you can't really train the other stuff.
No, no, and obviously you have to hire people who like working with people in these kind of situations, and let's face it, I mean, they're pressured situations. I mean, they're voluntary voluntarily pressured, but they're pressure situations. So it takes a particular type of person who likes to be able to operate in that way.
Absolutely. And another thing we realized too is, the wedding industry, there's zero room for error on
Mhm.
any front. So that trickles down all the way to us and our employees. And what I've realized is I have to hire people who naturally have extremely high standards of
Mm.
themselves. And those people naturally want to show up, they naturally want to do their best. They're self driven, highly motivated. I've hired people who aren't necessarily that way. And so then, as a management team, we're trying to push these really high standards. This is where we need to be at,
Mhm.
and that becomes tremendously overwhelming for them. They can't handle that type of pressure. So it really needs to be that person being the internal force of what's driving them to set their own standards so high in order to deliver and meet the expectations of our brides.
Yeah, and let's face, you're right. I mean, it is a zero error industry, but I guess, I mean, if there was one thing that's a catalyst for everything, it's probably the dress, isn't it? I mean, you probably that's one thing you can't get wrong,
Absolutely. Yes, yes, and that's what we always focus on, perfection on the dress.
and everything else can be handled from there.
Exactly.
But it's an interesting thing though, because I think this is the phenomena in general now is that people want experiences now as opposed to just a purchase, right? A retail. They don't want a retail transaction. They want an experience, and that puts and obviously but they're not quite sure what that means either.
Right.
So that
Yeah.
puts but so that's interesting, like, that as you moved into this and you started saying, "No, this is more of an experience." How have you found that, customers react or even talk to you afterwards about maybe even some families who've been through this with other designers?
Yeah, I mean, I think, what I've noticed is it's really about your energy and the energy that you're bringing to that environment.
Mhm.
You can have all the bells and whistles. You can have the champagne. You can have the pretty setting. You can have the chocolates or the food. But if you have the two identical things in two rooms,
Mhm.
and you have one person that shows up who has full confidence in themselves as a consultant, or the person working with them, who just loves what they're doing so much, wants to bring their best effort, wants to make the bride feel happy and comfortable. And that's truly authentic to what they're really doing versus someone who's showing up for the job and is trying to put on the happy face. Authenticity is a game changer.
Mm.
People may not necessarily be able to truly call it out, but they can certainly feel it.
Yeah, and I know I would agree with you, and I think those are all nice things to have, when you make somebody comfortable and you give them, like, champagne and all that. But let's face it, if I was in that situation, or if I'm in a situation where doing an important purchase or whatever, that stuff isn't important to me at the beginning. At the beginning, I want to make sure I feel like I'm in the right place and I'm in the hands of the right people for the actual thing I'm here for. Not that, yeah, it's great that I have champagne and all of that, but I'm still not sure whether you're the right person yet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because that level of connection and authenticity, it makes your nervous system relax, especially for a bride who's feeling really anxious and overwhelmed. Authenticity just allows that person to really sink in and feel, oh, I can trust this person. They're really looking out for me. They're going to give me the best advice. They're not going to push me. And often, we try to work with stores and
Mhm.
hire people that, even if the dress, maybe our brand isn't the right dress for the
Sure.
bride,
Mhm.
we'll be completely honest about that and still guide her, in another direction that's more aligned for her.
No, no, absolutely. And tell me also, as you said, I mean, authentic people can help other people relax because they're relaxed in themselves and
Yes,
is who they are, and you can see through it immediately when somebody's been inauthentic. So yeah, so that it's almost like if you have an authentic person who's grounded and stuff, the other person, the bride or whoever it is, who may be going off the scale physiologically right now, is they can feel that calmness and that realness in front of them, right? Because you can feel the opposite, let's be honest.
absolutely. And what's super interesting is, earlier in my business, I did not have as high of an EQ, to be honest. And what I realized over the years is that the my number one job is to have, you know, basically to control my nervous system
Mhm.
and elevate my EQ, because the more grounded and calm and centered I am as a leader, that transcends down into my team. So
Mhm.
even if, I didn't have the right team members at the time, um, actually, let me go backwards. What I realized is when I wasn't as grounded and calm myself, I wasn't hiring the right people. I was actually hiring people that were at the same level of my EQ. So I
Mhm.
was a little anxious, I was a little nervous. So naturally, I was kind of attracting those types of people into
Right.
my business. And it wasn't until I really started doing a lot of the inner work in myself and I started to elevate myself. I was more grounded, more calm. My leadership style changed. And then all of a sudden, I'm attracting people that are at the same energetic level as I am and more aligned with my energy. And so it was really interesting for me, like how that kind of shifted. And yeah, likes attract likes, right?
Yeah. Well, it's true. I mean, people, it's still it's a little lesson that it's kind of bizarre that people still don't understand is that people take cues from what you do, not from what you say. Like it's so simple, and everybody knows that. However, people don't address that because you could say like, I want everybody to be really super happy and calm, and I want this to be a great experience. But you're the one in charge who's going, come on, we've got to get this going now. Go in, set it up. It has to be perfect for that person so they can feel really calm. And now you've completely undone the whole situation. So it always comes from the leader.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the work I've been doing lately has just completely changed my business. And especially when there's crazy, the world is a really interesting place right now.
It
It's
is.
not necessarily easy, and I think a lot of people are on edge and
Mhm.
nervous and anxious. And so, being a calm, grounded leader in the middle of chaos is more important now than ever. And that then transcends down to my managers and then every single person on my team, which then transcends down into our the way we show up to our
Mhm.
customers, the brides, and our stores.
Yeah, I know you're right. And with the world being a crazy place, then it's good that maybe people want to come to work and kind of be in a positive environment and maybe forget about some of the other stuff that's going on. So in some ways, maybe work is a sanctuary for people, and that the more you can keep it that way, the better.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And, same thing with, before when, I wasn't as grounded,
Hmm.
I wasn't the people who were grounded, maybe the employees who were a little bit more calm, that environment didn't quite work with them. Now everyone is, I have significantly less turnover now
Hmm.
with my new leadership tone and, um, everyone stays and everyone loves it and everyone shows up. And, you know, having a leader who can stay calm in the middle of chaos just allows them to be able to think more clearly and how they're going to execute their job and move through the trouble. And we've had a lot of stuff going on. Last year we really had trouble with the tariffs. It was a
Mm.
really challenging year, and thank God I've done the work to be the leader that I am today. But I think about if I was, if tariffs happened a couple years earlier, I would have been really frantic and,
Mm.
not that I was not nervous and a little scared, but I really used a lot of my tools to stay grounded. And when you're able to create that calm inside, you can think more clearly and you can
Yeah.
actually solve the problem versus expending all of that energy on being frantic and fearful and frustrated, and it just doesn't help solve the problem in any way.
Yeah. And let's face it, I mean, that's almost like diametrically opposite to popular mythology or, or stereotypes of the fashion industry, isn't it? Where everything is like over the top and like totally out of control.
Oh, completely, completely. Yeah, the fashion industry, kinda breeds chaos.
Yeah, but like I said, I mean, I think when people even like when stores or people individuals like going to a designer, they're kind of expecting that, so they probably have a bit of a surprise when they come to you and your team, and it's a more grounded experience because grounded isn't what you tend to associate with fashion.
Not at all, and you know what's really interesting too is we tend to attract more grounded brides as well. So our
Uh,
brides are very, very sweet, calm, down to earth. Not that they don't get stressed out,
Sure.
but it's really interesting to see how our brides really differ. I talk to my stores and I'll ask them about other brands and other brides. And, some of these other brands that are really high, we're high end
Yeah.
as well, but also very high end. They're like, these brides are just whew, a handful, but your brides are so sweet and so lovely and so great. And I think that's really cool that, e- energetically or like that personality just
Mhm.
really trickles all the way down the chain.
So you found the antidote to the bridezillas then?
Yes, yes, exactly. Be the calm, be the calm. One of my friends always tells me, be the Buddha. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, Kelly, this has been fascinating. All of Kelly's information will be below this video, but before we go, please do remind people about what you do.
yes, absolutely. So we design incredible dresses that range from $2,000 to $8,000.
Wow.
We sell across the country, and our dresses are a mix from high fashion, modern, fresh, timeless. So definitely check out our website and
Oh, yeah.
enjoy.
Absolutely. Sorry, while Kelly was talking, I was just looking at the dresses. They're very impressive. Yeah, very classy. And you're saying, and you said, and to be honest, I mean, those prices are that's a very good range. So that probably can accommodate most people.
Absolutely, and one thing I do wanna note mention that's, unique for us is we customize our gowns.
Mhm.
Um, More than 50% of our dresses are customized by our brides, and that's very rare for a high fashion brand to offer
Mhm.
customizations, and like I said, we are very customer centric. That was the foundation of my brand, so I want my brides to feel fully embodied in what they're wearing, something that feels special, unique, and who wouldn't want a custom high-end fashion dress?
Absolutely. And like I said, you should go check. So I'd encourage you to go check them out. They're phenomenal. They're fantastic looking collections. So well done.
Thank you.
So thank you again, Kelly. Thank you for watching and listening, and I'll see you all again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.